Wednesday, the 29th of June, marked the first anniversary of the Eswatini massacre of more than 80 protesters who were killed when they took to the streets demanding democracy. Protests against Eswatini's monarchy system broke out on the 29th of June, led by young people, particularly high school and university students, in response to the country's lack of development and opportunities. According to witnesses, security forces hit back violently, firing gunshots and tear gas to disperse the protesters. Today, a group of activists held a commemoration ceremony at Constitution Hill in Johannesburg to commemorate all those that lost their lives and those that were maimed on that day a year ago. Okay, to talk about the commemoration, the day, the events that occurred, human rights lawyer and chairperson of the SwazilandMulti-Stakeholder Forum, Thulani Maseko, joins us now. I mean, I said the 29th, but I know that that was pretty much the build-up, should I say, the culmination of what had been days of protest and obviously years of frustrations. Perhaps to reflect back on the day itself and just to remind those who either didn't know or perhaps set the record straight even.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks so much for this time to be with you. Indeed, today was the culmination of a series of events that we started at the beginning of this month in Swaziland. As you may know, that we've got 4 regions: Manzini, Shiselweni, Ho, and Lubombo. So we gathered in all the 4 regions, remembering the events of June last year, which in our view represents the darkest hour in the history of Swaziland and our struggle for democracy in that country. So today we then came here at the Constitution Hill to remember, following those events, and we had a prayer service with some pastors and bishops here in South Africa. And then we also had political messages from comrades here and colleagues in South Africa who are supporting our struggle in Swaziland.
As I said, so the 29th of June was a climax. There had been already mobilization before. Talk to us about that, because I think a lot of people, when they think about what happened on their day, they tend to remember the arrests of the members of parliament and the murder, the disappearance of a young... So talk to us about some of the events that happened prior.
So the situation is such that we are a people that are living under a monarchy, which is very oppressive. We often say that from the day, April 1973, when the late king abrogated what was then the independent constitution of Swaziland, people have always claimed that we need to return to a situation where we as the people have a right to form a government of our own. You will know that then some MPs within parliament raised the issue and said that the time has indeed come for us as a people to elect a government, to the extent that they moved a motion that there must be a review of what is today called the Constitution of Swaziland. That message, which also resonated with the multi-party groups of Swaziland, led to a situation where the people on their own moved petitions all over the country, demanding that their MPs should raise the issue indeed in parliament. Which then led to the 2 MPs, Bakete Mabuza, who was in jail together with Mtandeni Dube, and the 3rd MP who was in exile, Makau Simelana. We are demanding that the king should allow a situation where the people have a stake in the way the country is governed, as opposed to this oppressive monarchy we're living under.
So, and I do this to give it a human face. The disappearance, then subsequent murder of a student, to just belie some of the reports that came out that people were, that there were people who were legally raided, that there were people who were targeted, and that goes beyond the suppression of the opposition, that it was part of a systemic crackdown of opposition to the monarchy, the absolute monarchy, which you say you want to do away with, the alleged misuse of funds of the monarchy. So just for, to give it a human face, exactly what do the people of Swaziland face? Because they're characterized as terrorism by the state.
Of course, we are living under a country where, as I've said, the king commands all the power. He is a king who commands executive authority. He holds judicial authority as well. And then he commands the power of the legislature. So what drives the people of Swaziland that we can't have a situation where only one person, maybe together with a few in the royal family, run the affairs of the country. So this situation, is unacceptable, as you understand it. And not only does the king control political power, as it were, he controls the economy to the extent that he runs the fleet of chain stores. He is in agriculture. He's in the petrol industry, and his children are involved in it. So the people are being denied just the basic, opportunities to invest in their own, to run their lives, let alone the fact that we don't have the right to form a government as we see fit under a multi-party dispensation. So it has come to the nation that the situation where the king runs the affairs of the country without any form of accountability cannot be allowed to continue anymore. We have said that we must be allowed to allow a process of transition through a peaceful negotiation that will lead to a multi-party dispensation. Obviously, as you may know, that SADC attempted to intervene in that situation, but we think that the king is not committed to that process.
It's important for us to trace back these steps to see if there's been any change a year later. I mean, some of what sparked the protest as well was the handling of the monarchy of COVID-19, and you are calling for reforms. What progress has been made, if any?
Well, as I say, that we were made to believe as of at least November last year, when the SADC, through the organ Troika, sought to intervene in Swaziland and called upon the chair of the organ Troika, President Ramaphosa, to rush to Swaziland to have a meeting with the king. We were made to understand that in that meeting, the chair and the king agreed and resolved to engage in a process that would lead to some meaningful dialogue. That was November last year. We were told that the king would allow himself to go into his Ingwala ceremony to come out sometime in February and therefore begin the process. We have waited. To date, nothing has been said. What we hear is that the king seeks to engage in the process of dialogue through his Sibaya. And we are saying the type of problems that we're facing with are beyond a negotiation that will be controlled and led and manipulated by the king through his powers as a traditional authority. We want an open, inclusive, accountable process where the people have a stake in it. So we have not made any progress as far as we're concerned. That is why we think that the king has to date, unleashed the army and the police to attack and torture defenseless and unarmed citizens, just for them demanding that there must be this process of engagement.
And part of the criticism of the SADC Troika and what it was seeking to do in its intervention was the lack of inclusivity. Who ought to be at the forefront in your understanding of these negotiations in seeking constitutional monarchy? What elements would be paramount?
Well, for ourselves as the multi-stakeholder forum, working together with all the organs that are advocating for a peaceful process, we have said that we would like to see a process which is mediated by SADC, obviously, where we as a people are assisted to come down together over a round table and thresh out the issues. And we have said that part of the condition that must be created is that it must be an inclusive process where all the political parties of the country, including Pudema, which was labeled in 2008 as a terrorist organization, and today we know that Zweli Martin Lamine of the Swaziland News was listed as such. We are saying that there must be creation of conditions of peace, where the people have a right to dialogue amongst themselves, where political leaders are able to, interact with the people. We are saying that there must be, a creation, at least of an interim period of engagement where the government of the day surrenders power to the people. We are saying that there must be, an agreement to a process that will lead to the adoption of a democratic constitution for Swaziland.
All right. So
all these are being denied by the king.
Let's then look at what it will take to create those structures, and whether you think it is likely that the monarch himself will acquiesce to this.
One must say that we are happy that what we have seen so far, despite our concern that SADC was too slow in the process, we are happy that as of February this year, we now know that SADC presented to the king what they call the draft framework for engagement. And they are saying that, of course, it must be a process that is inclusive. The problem that we are faced with is that we are dealing with the king and government who are not prepared to listen to the views of the people. We are dealing with a king who can't even take advice from his colleagues within the region. So we do think that SADC must put some pressure on the king to understand and accept that the only way we can break the impasse is through a negotiation and dialogue amongst the people.
Is it likely that there will be more protests, which, reading between the lines really from what the police and the military have said, will inadvertently turn violent, because citizens were saying they're peaceful protests, they were attacked by the police and the military, and what the state structures were saying is that it's because the people themselves were turning violent and therefore they had to take action. Do you think that these scenes are likely to play themselves out again?
Well, one must say that we find ourselves in a very difficult situation, in the sense that the government of Swaziland has closed all channels of peaceful engagement. As we speak right now, we know that there's been a total blanket ban on all marches in Swaziland since October last year. But we know that there are those who are beginning to say that, time comes to a people to raise the question that when all forms of peaceful engagement are closed, what should be the response? And we regret to say that it seems to us we are gradually becoming a violent society because of the absence of means of expression. So right now, despite the fact that government is so committed to closing down all protests, we hope that we can bring more pressure on the government to unlock the doors, to allow us to express ourselves. Absent that, we do think that we are likely to see the violence escalating and people defending themselves against the state.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Thulani Maseko. He is chairperson of the Swaziland Multi-Stakeholder Forum and also a human rights lawyer.